What's up, everybody? My name is Guido. If you don't know who I am, I basically help coaches to build done for you scaling infrastructures in their business, all the way from lead flow to being able to deliver properly up to 50 and 100K per month. And so, if you want content that helps you get there as a coach, feel free to subscribe and leave a like to this video. And today, basically, what I'm going to show you is how I structured out my course, completely different than how most people structure their courses. I truly don't believe that people need like extra information. What they need is to solve problems. And so that's what I want to do today for you. And to make sure that when you are facing a bottleneck or a constraint in your business, you know exactly what you have to do to deal with that and to overcome it, right? And so, yeah, let's get on with it. So I'm gonna share my screen and show you exactly what my course looks like. Um, so I call it Coaching Systems Incubator. The reason being because I want my program to feel like, or my structure to feel a little bit like an incubator. Like the difference between an incubator and an accelerator, for example, is that an incubator is the beginning part, the beginning stage that is super important, that requires a lot of adaptation and a lot of like changing of the initial idea in order to find product market fit in the startup world. And also, they tend to give a lot more support and one-on-one attention, which is truly what I want to do. I don't want to work with like 1,000 different coaches necessarily, or if I do that, and when I do that, I want to do it still in a way where there's elements of one-on-one that people can really rely on people to, to actually be able to solve their problems. Now, the course is almost done. It's not fully done yet, but it's basically just this. I'm even going to delete the lower part. It's going to be one video per module. And the premise is, in your business, you really only have about 5 main problems that are happening in your coaching business, right? Up until, let's say, 100K per month. That's really, really it. Um, People like to overcomplicate it, and they like to, make it like this secret formulas that are going to get you the next level. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is find a combination of data that is going to get you to 100K. That's it. How can you find a combination of number of clients, pricing, show rate, closing rate, and ROAS to, in a healthy way, scale to 100K per month without breaking the back end? That's really it. And so this is kind of how I break it down. We have obviously the start here, which is all the basics you need in order to be able to sustain 100K per month growth, right? But once you have that in place, you're going to have 5 main bottlenecks. You're going to have the first bottleneck, which is bookings, right? How many calls are you booking in the calendar? 2 is show rate. 3 is closing rate. 4 is price, and 5 is ROI. And I'll explain each of these, right? Let's start with bookings. So with bookings, what happens is that a lot of times people advise to have like, yeah, start booking 1 to 3 calls a day. That's not enough. You're going to need to book and take so many more calls than what you think, that it's going to blow your mind. So I used to work for somebody that at some point he was booking to get to 200 to 500K per month. He was booking 120 calls every 2 days, right? So you can kind of have an idea. Um, what matters is that there's always going to be inefficiencies in the process of booking calls and having them show up in the calendar. And so because of that, you need to play with all those things so that when you have the bookings with the inefficiencies of people canceling, rescheduling, of not being a good fit, of not being qualified, of not showing up, of not being closable right now and closable in the future instead, all of that will remove numbers from the initial bookings number to get the final closes per week, right? And what I recommend is to get between 4 and 6 closes per week to get to 100K per month. So imagine, other factors, how much they have to be optimized in order to hit that, right? So if you have less than 30 calls booked per week, that's a red flag. That's the main constraint. You have to look into that, right? And there's a few reasons. I'm going to add all the reasons here in some time, but basically some of the reasons could be that you just don't have time to be in the DMs, right? Then you need a DM setter, or perhaps you don't have enough lead flow, so you need to fix your ads, or perhaps you need to you're just not good enough at setting, right? Perhaps you're not doing enough follow-ups. Like you're getting people, you're pitching and even sending the link, but people are lazy, they're just not going to book right away. So you have to keep following up with them until they book. Or maybe you're not being urgent about people don't have enough urgency to book a call in the moment because you haven't explored in depth, right? The gap for them to want to book a call. All these could be reasons, more or either one or more could be reasons why you're not booking at least 30 calls per week. And that's what you have to then fix those things with the solutions I will provide here to in order to remove the constraint. Next one is show rate, right? So show rate is when you book a call, right, after you cancel people, because you should be canceling people. How many people are showing up to the call that should be showing up, right? So let's say you have 10 calls today, which could be a lot for a lot of people, but 10 calls is not that much actually. Or they, it's pretty good, obviously. So let's say the 10 calls in general. If 5 of them show up, it's really not very good. If 3 of them show up, it's quite horrible actually. If 6 show up, we're starting to get better, right? But 7 out of 10 is better, is what I would say is ideal to shoot for. 80% obviously is amazing, and anything above that is pretty not very common at scale, unless you do like very high level B2B. And so obviously depending on also if you're B2B or B2C, that makes a difference. And so, but if anything, even if you're B2C, which tends to have lower show rate, especially if it's like make money online where it's very saturated, a lot of offers out there, you still want to get at least 60% show rate. There are some cases where it might be lower, but usually they're not doing the basics, the fundamentals that I recommend in the Start Here video, that allows you to kind of have that, have the baseline of show rate. Next one is closing rate. Okay, so with closing rate, it's sorry, not show rate, closing rate. If you're closing, so let's say the people that show up, right? Sometimes people calculate closing rate based on number of bookings, right? Like people that were in, let's say that day, 10 were booked, 7 showed up, and then 1 closed or 2 closed, let's say. And people tend to calculate like 1 or 2 out of 10, right? Which is the people that were booked, not the people that showed. But that's incorrect. You want to calculate close rate based on the people that showed up to the call, right? And so if they showed up, then they have to reschedule right away. You don't count that either. But what you want to do is if you have the call with them, right, regardless of which point you stop, sometimes calls take longer, so you have to do 2 call closes. If that's regardless, like the people that show up and go through the process to some extent at least, then you count them and then you calculate the close rate on that, right? If less than 20% of those people close, then you have a problem on there, right? Sometimes you can have like 14, 18, and it's all right. It depends on the offer. This is where the data kind of starts to get mixed up, right? If your closing rate is low, it might not be that you're a bad closer, right? But if we look at the calls that you're having, it might be that people are not qualified financially, right? So how can you expect people, they shouldn't even be in the calendar in the first place, right? So you should have canceled them. So that's a cancellation problem, not a close rate problem, right? Although it is a closing rate problem because it reflects on the closing rate, but the cancellation affects that. So that's what we fix. Another reason why the close rate might be bad is because, well, you're just not good enough at sales yet, maybe, right? And there's a few ways this could happen. Maybe you're not digging deep enough for pain, not just problems inside of the discovery. Perhaps your pitch is not optimized, right? And your offer as well, right? So the bad offer could be better, plus how it's portrayed in the pitch, which makes a huge difference, by the way. That affects how people perceive it. Perhaps you're not objection handling is also not great, right? Because you don't know how to do it. It's disorganized, or you let people off the call too soon when they shouldn't be off the call, right? Things like that. Another thing that could happen is when people show up with the wrong energy to the call, right? They start taking so many sales calls that they start getting annoyed of talking to the same people over and over. And also they start making assumptions about the people that are showing up. It's like, oh, whenever somebody says this, they always end up not buying. Like a very, very high level closer could maybe make those connections, but even then, I don't think it's a healthy thing to do, because if you have the call, you might as well take it. And if that's a problem of like if you follow your process exactly the same, regardless of what you feel that they might end up doing at the end, and then the data suggests that in fact all those people do tend up not closing, then that's different, right? Maybe they need more nurturing, maybe they're not qualified enough, maybe they're not ideal fits. All those things could be a factor, and so it's reasonable, right? But that's a data-based decision, not a I feel like this on the call, so I'm not gonna, do my best on the call. That's a big no-no in my opinion. Other reasons that could happen, the closing rate is no, I don't see that those are the main reasons, but um, yeah, those are the main reasons. Like there's other things, but they're like sub things of the points we mentioned. So that's basically it. Next thing is price. Um, think about this, right? I mentioned you need 4 to 6 closes per week in order to make 100K, and that's once you've collected all the cash. Now, if you have a $3,000 product, how the hell are you going to make that work? Like, think about this. Perhaps you haven't looked at the math for a second on that. Um, Let me just pull this here, right? So, if your product is 3K, which a lot of people still at the 5 to 20K range are charging this, not because they don't think their product is worth more. It's just because sometimes it's that, right? They might not think it's worth, but usually it's more because they don't feel like people would buy it. They're already struggling to get people to buy a 3K product. So how the hell would they buy a 5K, 6K? Well, what I've noticed is that if somebody can buy 3K, they can buy 5. They usually can buy 6 too. And people don't really care about what's the total amount. What they care is how much they have to pay per month. So as long as you maybe make your program a little bit longer and you make your installments a little bit more flexible, or you use tools like Affirm that allows them to pay now, to buy now, but pay in the long term, but you get the cash collected up front, that's even better. So, and I've gotten this to work. Like one of my clients, he was charging 2,400 last year, April. And at this point, now we raised the price again to 5,200. And the next jump will be 58, and then will be 62. And we've been closing more because we optimize also the other things, right? The people that didn't have the money, we canceled more. And so we have more quality people on the calls, and that helps to, increase. So now we're consistently closing 3 to 6, more like 3 to 5 a week. And that obviously gets us the numbers a lot higher. So if you have 3K, it's just not gonna work, right? Like let's put it this way: 100K divided by 3K. That's 33 closes a month. That's very high level. Okay. That's 33 units, right? So a closer can do 16, 20, 24 units, let's say, per month. That's reasonable. That's a very high level closer, by the way, 24 units. As a closer, I was doing like 16, 18, and I didn't have a very optimized calendar. And so yeah, that's a big factor as well. So when people say, "Oh, I have a 40% close rate," well, it's probably because you have very good leadership that really understands how to run a business, right? It's not, and you might be a good closer as well. So altogether makes for the closing rate, right? Which so it's warranted. But as you can see, 3K is going to take a lot of closes. That's really hard to do. 33 closes divided by 4, that's 8 closes a week. That's hard. That's not easy. Okay. Now maybe you might do that, right? But even then, a lot of people, like the founders, tend to not be the best at sales right away, right? That people can definitely get better. So even that might be a challenge. But the thing is, you have to always count that the closer you bring on will need a ramp up period, and that ramp up period will require like them, even when they're fully ramped up, they might only still close like at 80% what you were closing, right? So the performance that you were having, hopefully more, right? But 70 to 80% of what you were doing before is reasonable. So you have to count with that too. And because of that, the higher your price is, the better. And also because it makes it more attractive. If you're giving them 10%, it makes it for a more attractive offer, right? And so if you charge instead something like 6K, right? 100,000 divided by 6K, that's 17. That's a lot more reasonable, right? It's just have 17 people a month. That's doable. And if you have a money offer, you could even bump this up to like 88 if it's like B to solopreneur or B2C. Even up to 98 I've seen. So, the sky, the roof is, how do you say that? Sky's the limit. That's it. Like money doesn't matter as long as people see the value. So The only reason why you can charge more is because one, your product is not good enough, or your delivery is not structured enough for you, for people to see the value. And two, you're not portraying that value properly to them. And three, um, you don't have the sales skills to be able to confidently deliver that price and then handle whatever objections might come up, which is completely normal to be to have that at the stage. Like that's a trained skill from a closer. And so if you're not a closer, you might have to, learn that, which is totally fine. But see how it's so much easier, right? So price makes a huge difference, huge. And then finally, the last thing is ROAS. What is ROAS, right? It's the amount of cash you're getting upfront from the ad spend that you're spending, right? So if you're spending $1,000 in ads, and if you get $3,000 upfront on average, right? From those leads, then that's a 3x ROAS. That's like the bottom, the limit of how much I would have to earn in order to make an ad like be good enough, right? But ideally, you have at least 4x or 5x. Now, some people calculate based on revenue. I don't think that's very useful because who knows if you're going to collect the revenue and when, and it's just the delay increases by a lot. So I tend to prefer to have a 3x just on upfront cash. It makes it a lot easier. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Of course, you have things like marketing spend could potentially be like if you have very high expenses for some reason, like if you're paying a setter and closer more than the standard 15% combined, even if it's like 18, that's fine. But anything above 18 just doesn't make sense. And so just profitably, right? Plus that, plus the marketing spend, the ad spend, right? That can start to add up. If you have other spends, you shouldn't. Like it's a coaching business, so like it doesn't make sense, right? You should not be having other spends like expensive softwares. All that has to be taken out so you can make it as easy as possible for you to hit 100K. And that's pretty much it. Like if your ROAS is not healthy, that means either your ads are not hitting people the right way, um, and so you need some work on the copywriting, or there's inefficiencies in the system, and usually that means ROAS is not alone, right? There's going to be a problem of ROAS and a problem of other things that are clearly showing that they're not good. So, but it will show up with other things. And that's why I created this sheet. And feel free to send me a message on Instagram if you want this. But I created this sheet that literally tells you what the constraints are based on this description of these five, right? Basically, whatever lights up as red means that it is a constraint. And then you have to basically fix that. And that's the powerful thing about this, is that it will tell you literally what to work on without you, because the biggest thing is that people either don't know what to solve, or they're solving the wrong thing at the wrong time, right? Or solving the right thing at the wrong time, right? Let's say your closing rate is 20%, right? But you're getting 5,000 leads, but you're only booking like 10%, like 2% of those leads. Like, sure, can you work on your closing rate to get it to 25? Maybe. Probably you can. But the big issue there is that your booking rate should be at least 10%. So if it's not, then that's the thing to work on. And this is what this sheet will tell you. So hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, I hope you have an amazing day. Once again, if you're a coach and you want, to get to 50K per month, and you're around 7 to 20K, more than happy to help out. Feel free to subscribe and watch all my videos. Reach out to Instagram. Happy to help out for free whenever is required. And yeah, have an amazing day, and hope that was helpful.